the mute button unmuting itself. My name is Jesse. I am with Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. And if you are joining us for the first time, we are all about bringing conservation, adventure, and science into classrooms around the world through over 40 live, free, monthly interactive broadcasts. A huge thank you to all our teachers and students for joining us today as we continue to celebrate and showcase the coolest people, places, organizations, all across planet Earth. It is such a pleasure to get to do this and bring these stories to you every single day. Now, over the last few months, we've sort of dove back in with a topic that we really like to feature in September, and that is plastic pollution. This is something that so many kids around the world are so passionate about. You guys do such great work to try and change your habits to help save the world around you. And today we are going to dive in with Maureen McCarthy for her very first broadcast with us here at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants. She's going to talk about some of her innovative work in activism, trying to encourage people to do the same and take positive action for the planet. We're going to talk about waste. We're going to talk about what to recycle together and so much more. And so, without further ado, I'm going to welcome in Maureen. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us today and welcome to the broadcast. I can't wait for your presentation today.
Thank you. Yeah, awesome.
Awesome. So I know you've got a lot to share with us. If you want to bring up your slide deck and go full screen with that guy, you are good to go.
And am I in full screen right now?
You are. It's thinking about it. If you press play on that guy, it'll be good.
Awesome. All right.
Perfect. Nice.
How's that?
You're all set.
Good. Thank you all for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to talk to you about this topic that I'm super passionate about. So my name is Maureen, and my team and I created a nonprofit called FOCO Trash Mob. FOCO stands for Fort Collins, and that's where the team lives. But you can do a trash mob wherever you live, and I hope you will. So what is a trash mob? Well, have you ever seen a flash mob? If not, you should Google it and watch one. They're choreographed events that are meant to look spontaneous. Well, a trash mob would be a flash mob, but with an environmental message and action attached to it. So the people would be waving or dragging the same plastic item or juggling it or wearing it. I don't know. That's up to how creative you want to get with it. Then afterwards, everyone would mail that plastic back to the manufacturer with a well-written letter that includes real viable alternatives for them to use. Our dream is to make a trash mob video, and we just got fiscally sponsored. So maybe that will happen this year. Until then, we do direct action campaigns that annoy and nudge plastic corporations. We enjoy educating the public about the plastic pollution crisis, kind of like what I'm doing with you today. We want to try to have fun while doing something about all the unnecessary plastic. And our motto is reduce, reuse, return to offender. This may all sound like a weird way to protest single-use plastics, or SUPs, but I call them SUPs. But others have had a similar idea. B. Johnson coined the term active discards in her book, Zero Waste Home. And some angry ladies in England conduct plastic attacks by returning their SUPs to the store. So why is protesting SUP so important to me? Well, I worked for over 12 years at my county's landfill and then for my city's waste reduction and recycling team. Part of my job was to train my volunteers at our recycling center to answer all of those nuanced questions that you will probably ask me today. Like, should I take the cap off or keep it on when I recycle my water bottle? Where can I recycle styrofoam? What do you mean this isn't recyclable? It says so right here. Like you all may have noticed from these questions, and I certainly did, most of the confusion about recycling was around plastics, most of which is not recyclable. And while the questions mounted, so did the plastic. It seemed like we kept seeing more and more in different kinds of SUPs coming to our center. And this graph shows that's exactly what was happening. So, challenged with educating my community about this, I focused on how we must understand that not all recycling is created equal. We need to look at recyclables as the resources that created our packaging. For example, paper. We know that paper comes from trees and it's a great thing to recycle. It makes total sense to make paper from paper and leave the trees to make oxygen. But paper can only be recycled about 7 times before the fibers get too weak. Unlike aluminum, which is something we should always recycle, it is recyclable infinity times without changing its chemical properties. And when you drink from an aluminum can, at least 50% of it is made from other aluminum cans. And when bauxite is mined to create the aluminum, it is hugely degrading to the area where it's extracted. But plastic is different. During my 12 years at the landfill and recycling center, hardly anyone I asked knew where plastic came from. How many of you knew this? Especially the last part that is more recent, that most plastics today are made from ethane, a byproduct of fracked gas. And most people thought that the numbers in the chasing arrows meant that those plastics were recyclable. The reality is that most plastics are not recyclable, and the plastic industry knew that for decades. They appropriated the chasing arrow symbol for their resin identification system. This was an ingenious marketing move because it suggests that any item with this symbol can be recycled. But the truth is that the numbers inside the triangle symbol are a resin identification code. It just tells the manufacturers what chemicals and other properties are contained in those 7 types of plastic. By the way, not only are there more than 7 kinds of plastic, there are more than 700. So let's take a deeper dive into plastic production so we can understand how it's made. Remember that most plastic today is made from ethane, which used to just be flared off during the fracking process. Nowadays, that ethane is captured and sent via pipelines to an ethane cracker facility. Cracking is the term chemists use for the process of breaking molecular bonds in complex hydrocarbons to create simpler ones. Bear with me. Because the bond is very strong, the process requires extremely high temperatures. Ethane cracks at 1,650 degrees Fahrenheit and creates ethylene. That's the basic building block of most plastics. Add pressure and a catalyst, and you get polyethylene or PET. We know PET from water bottles. That is extruded and cut into little pellets. And these tiny polyethylene pellets are the feedstock for everything from auto parts to zippers, but especially subs. It takes 1,000 pellets to make one disposable water bottle that will be used for a few minutes before being discarded. Okay, that was depressing. So now we know the problem with how it's made, but why is it so hard to recycle? Why can't we just recycle it all? Let's take the example of a water bottle. On the left, the chasing arrows on the bottom of the bottle is a number 1 or PET or polyethylene. That is also the case for the clamshells on the right. But the bottles are recyclable and the clamshells are not. So why is that? One reason is that manufacturers use different processes to produce different kinds of PET containers. They make clamshells using a process called thermoforming, and bottles and jugs through a process called blow molding. That makes them just different enough so that the clamshells cannot be included with the plastic slurry that will be created from the bottles. Another problem with PET is that the optic sorters at the sorting facilities cannot recognize the clamshell shape. They're set to shape and not resin. So they will capture the bottles and not the clamshells. And lastly, when people wish cycle, or I wish it was recyclable and I'm going to put the wrong thing in the bin, that thing takes a long journey to a sorting facility called a MRF, where it goes through miles of conveyor belts and ends up in the last pile headed for the nearby landfill, wasting everybody's time, energy, and money. Single stream material recovery facilities, or MRFs, are where almost all U.S. recyclables end up. These are sorting facilities. Nothing gets recycled there. As you can see, everything rolls down a conveyor belt in a single stream to be sorted, mostly mechanically. Magnets catch the metals, eddy currents blow aluminum off the belt, optic sorters and robots separate out the few plastics that actually get recycled. Numbers, ones, twos, and sometimes fives. Then the sorted materials are baled and sold to waste brokers. Due to the low value of post-consumer plastics, a waste broker may be an incinerator plant where it's basically burned and used for fuel. And since an estimated 45% of plastic produced today goes strictly to making SUPs and packaging, we should just call it frackaging. At this point, so much plastic's being made that if plastic were a country, it'd be the world's 5th largest emitter of greenhouse gases, making it a huge contributor to climate change. So, once I found out all these details about how damaging SUPs are throughout their life cycle, from extraction to manufacturing, brief life of a few minutes or less to disposal, I felt pretty angry and dismayed. What could I do? Well, of course, we can do our best in our home, school, and work to minimize our use of SUPs. But our making personal choices to avoid SUPs by itself cannot change a crisis this big. It's harder and harder to even feed ourselves without unwittingly buying stuff in SUPs. The real solution is to turn off the tap. We must stop making SUPs and stop using them. We need to switch to reusables and refillables. Groups like Upstream are working on infrastructure for us to be able to do that. So let's take a 3-prong approach. Number 1, now that you know about this, each one needs to teach one. We must educate our communities through presentations like this one, speaking and tabling at community events and schools, just to name a few. 2, we need to put pressure on the companies that create and purchase SUPs. What if those plastic producers and buyers of plastic packaging had to deal with the disposing of it? Let's tell them, you made it, you take it. And that brings us to 3, which is to support legislation where you can. Extended producer responsibility, or EPR bills, have been introduced and or passed in almost a dozen states, including Colorado. And you are never too young or too old to write or call your legislators and ask for EPR. Are you in? These groups are all working on different aspects of SUP's pollution crisis. Join them. Join us. Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen. That was awesome. Well, I'm going to give you a second to come out of screen share so you can see us again, have a bit of a conversation. I will note again, beyondplastics.org is Maureen's organization. We did an amazing program with Kathy Race from there not too long ago as well. That and this will be on our YouTube channel for anyone who wants to check them out in the weeks and months to come, to go alongside our many hundreds of other plastics programs that we've done in our history. For our YouTube friends, if you guys want to chime in the chat, please do share emails. We'd love to hear your questions over the next couple minutes. And Maureen, I'm going to dive in with our live classes to see if there's any questions about plastics in just a second. Miss Coddington, I will be coming to you guys first. Before I do, Maureen, is there something personally you've done in your own life based on the things that you've learned that you find has been really beneficial in helping turn off that tap of plastic pollution? Anything that really jumps out that you've done since you started learning all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, some of our campaigns we feel like they've produced results, like, and we've done a number of campaigns, but the one that comes to mind was the recent one with Starbucks. And Starbucks like gives you a dime when you bring your reusable container, they call it a personal cup. And now Starbucks gives 25 stars. And we ended up, having communications with their actual sustainability chief. We went back and forth. So we feel like we may have nudged them to do that.
Yeah.
And giving 25 stars for a reusable cup at Starbucks, it's like getting $1 off your drink. I mean, it's a lot more than a dime.
Fantastic. And this is something that, again, when you have the chance to influence a big business like Starbucks that gives away millions of cups of coffee, produces tons and tons of waste every single day, your impact is so outsized. It's great to do things at home, and we're going to talk about, I'm sure, some of those over the course of our Q&A period. But what an amazing achievement, and kudos to you guys, and for Starbucks, too, for doing that action. Miss Coddington's class, we're going to head to Ottawa for our grade 3s. If you guys want to kick us off with a question, you are good to go. Hey, guys. Hi, yeah. Oh, okay. So right now your audio is on, but it's really, really low. So maybe talking from the other side of the camera, if Miss Coddington can repeat that question, that would be great. We'll see if we can hear it. Why can paper only be recycled that limited amount of times, Maureen? Great question.
So the strongest paper that we can recycle is cardboard, right? It's really durable and strong. And then as you recycle it more and more, it's sort of the fibers get weaker because you're adding chemicals and water to make a slurry. And so the next lowest one would be what's called paperboard. And that's like on a cereal box, from a cereal box and such. And then it gets weaker again to office paper. And then it gets weaker again. And finally, the weakest paper that is the last thing you could recycle are those egg cartons that are made of a sort of a really weak paperboardish thing, and if you just add water, they kind of start disintegrating. So it's just the nature of the fibers.
Yeah, it's just like, so I have some Kleenex in front of me here, and I mean, if you crumble that up, it breaks up very, very easily. It'd be very hard to recycle something like that. That's why we can't. But as you get harder and harder with the papers, right, you have that ability. So it's just based on the material itself. Great question to kick us off, guys. All right, we are getting to Alberta, Fournier grade 2-3s. If you guys want to join in and have a question for us, you're good to go. Hey, guys.
Hi.
There's so many of you packed in there. I love it.
Cooper is going to come up and ask a question so he can get nice and close.
Perfect.
Yeah. Okay, Cooper, you come right up to the camera here, sweet pea. Okay. You can wave, but you have to be quiet. All right, Cooper.
Why is it called a trash mob?
Yes. To repeat this for our classes that might not have heard of flash mobs, Maureen, I'd love to hear more.
Yep. So we wanted it to be sort of a fun name. And I love the idea of flash mobs. Flash mobs can be really beautiful. There's some gorgeous ones that they made in Europe with orchestras, and they can be really fun, and they can be like people dancing. So that was sort of my vision. And I think it would be great for people your age to do a trash mob, to make a video of one. I think it would be fun. I hope eventually I can make sort of a professional one. And that's what we're waiting for, but we need to get money to do that. And we don't have any money. So yeah.
The classic issue of money in science and nature and conservation communications. It's the struggle we all face, everyone we bring on this broadcast. But I love the question, guys. Way to go. Madam Lauren's class, you got a student right up at the camera, so unmute your mic and come on in. You're good to go. Hey, 5A. Hi, come unmute. There you are. Oh, thinking about it. Wants to work.
Hi. So we're in Canada, and we wanted to know if you had any information about recycling in Canada.
Nice.
I would suspect that in most of Canada, you also have MRFs, material recovery facilities. You may or may not have the global organization Waste Management, and that is the company that owns a lot of the MRFs in the United States. But you would know if you have a MRF because you would also have a recycling container where you could put everything in it, all mixed together, and that's called single stream.
Yep.
So do you have that?
So I again,
Only
we might
left.
dive in with that in a little bit, but I will note for any teacher that's joining in, wherever you happen to be joining from, is we've got an audience across Canada, across the US and beyond. Your municipality, so your city or township, will have all the up-to-date information on what you're able to recycle and create and waste and sort of, the whole waste stream for your local area. I grew up in Toronto, and it's very different from where I am now and what you can recycle, how you go about it. But those things are all out there. No matter where you live across North America and beyond, you can find out those things and how you can really take as much positive action to recycle as much as possible when you can. So I really like that question, Madam Maureen. And Fournier, grade 2, you guys run the ball. You do, so they have a perfect. Miss Evans, if you guys want to dive in, your camera's off, but your mic should be on. If you've got any questions, come on in and take us away. Hey, guys.
All right. I have 5th and 6th graders, and they want to know, what is the best thing, number one, what is the best thing students can do to reduce their waste and also influence producers?
Amazing. My favorite question.
Yeah. Like we said, of course, you start in your own life, and then you start going out. You start trying to get your restaurants that you're going to, like the Starbucks is a good example. And then from there, you can go into one of those 3 prongs that I talked about. You can get on more of an activist side, which is what our group does, or you can, I don't know if all of you young people know this, but when your legislators get a letter from you, they read it. When they get a letter from an old person like me, they may or may not read it. So you actually have more influence than you think. And you can go to our website, and we have past actions that are complete. You don't need to reinvent the wheel. All you have to do is just pick one of our campaigns and do it. And it's actually Foco Trash Mob's website.
Sorry, I'll bring that up in a second. Just making sure. Sorry.
No worries.
Well, no, and I'm really glad you highlighted this, because Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants actually was originally a classroom, like one classroom only project. And the kids in that class wrote to legislators in Australia about shark fishing, and were able to have impact that made world news from that one classroom. Kids these days, you guys have grown up with marches of 500,000, 1 million kids on climate action. So you know that your voice is heard, you know that you have this big impact. And it's really exciting today to get to feature some of the amazing work that Maureen and her team are doing with plastics. And that's stuff that you can translate into your classroom any single day. I really encourage you to check that out. And I'll bring up the proper link in about 2 seconds for everybody as well. Maureen, we're going to do a second round of questions with our live classes in just a minute. So Miss Coddington, I'm coming to you next, but YouTubers, you guys are sharing in the chat too, which is spectacular. Miss Higgins' class, Charlie in our grade 8 remote program in Erin, Ontario wants to know, how can recycling help with the conservation of our natural resources?
Recycling things like aluminum, for sure. As I pointed out, so bauxite, which is an element that's used in aluminum, isn't found in many parts of the earth. So where it's found, it's very detrimental when you saw the pictures of when they mine it. So by recycling that, and that's called closing the loop, when the item becomes what it was, which is what aluminum cans become, that's a really good thing. It keeps them from mining more bauxite, so that's a good example. There are lots of other examples about how recycling things that make sense to recycle, like aluminum and paper and glass in some instances, is important. Recycling plastic is kind of, in general, a waste of everybody's time, energy, and money, because it's just so much cheaper to go and get they call it virgin material. Just making more plastic is much cheaper. And yep, just want to also point out, we are affiliates of Beyond Plastics. That's the group that we are affiliates of. But yeah.
No, that's how I had the website up to begin with. So I am pulling that up, and I love that answer. One thing that a lot of our kids might know, because zoos and World Wildlife Fund and a lot of big organizations talk about this, is recycling your cell phone. So there are materials in all of your cell phones that are drawn from mines in West Africa. So you're literally helping protect gorilla habitat, some of the most endangered, incredible animals on this planet, by recycling your cell phones. So that's something that every kid can do. You all have them right now, or no family members that do. And so those things really do help protect natural resources in a really meaningful way. And I'm really glad we got that question. So thank you, Charlie. Miss Coddington's class, you guys are right at the camera. So I'm going to come back to you. Come on in and take us away. Hey. Oh, nice and loud, remember. What are SUPs, Maureen? If you could repeat that for us. Tell us a little more about what that means.
Yeah. SUPs are single-use plastic. So think of what that might be. What do you think might be a single-use plastic? Like, would it be this?
Yep.
Would it
No,
be
that's not a
this?
single-use plastic. You can use that a
No.
lot.
I'm going to use it hundreds and hundreds of times.
Nice. But straws, we all pretty much encounter single-use plastics every day. Straws are actually increasingly being banned across Canada, and you hardly find a plastic straw anymore, which is really good. We've got reusable straws, or we've got, food packaging is a great example.
My favorite.
Well, and this speaks back to a question earlier with like what kids can do. And one of the things that we've seen kids do for years now, it was even big when I was in school, was litterless lunches. If you pack a lunch that's all with things that you can use many times, or things that have their own wrapper, something like a banana, where you don't need any extra plastic or packaging for it, that really does go a long way to helping the planet. And so I'm really, really glad we got that question. And look in your own life for where you can reduce those single-use plastics and not use them. Have a reusable water bottle like Maureen, have a reusable lunch container like me, and that does a lot of good. So thanks for that. Fournier, 2 3s, if you guys want to come on in, you are good to go. Hey.
Yeah, I've got a list of kids, but we'll let Natalie go here. Okay,
perfect. Hey, Natalie.
What happens if you keep recycling and reusing paper? What would it make?
So it would make different kinds of paper, and each time you made the paper, the fibers would be weaker. So the last one you could make is those the egg container I was talking about. Yeah, and you can make paper mache in school. I think y'all maybe have done that.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Yeah.
Well, and I'm really glad you mentioned things that are like tangible that you can come and have. So increasingly you'll see paper, like literal paper to write on, packaging like egg cartons that'll say made from post-recycled content. So it's been, that company is using stuff that's been used before. But even if you don't use it for something that we tangibly use like that, you can use it for art. You mentioned paper mache. Increasingly around the world, there's these amazing campaigns to take old things or plastic that's washed up on a beach and turn them into things, melt them down and make them into things. There's a lot of organizations. Burio is a good example that makes skateboards and sunglasses and other cool things from plastics. But art projects, Wash to Shore is a program we featured many times in this program, where they take it and make art pieces. So a giant polar bear or a shark or an animal that's being affected by plastic pollution made out of the very thing that's affecting it. And you'll see these at zoos and aquaria around the world. So it's an exciting time for highlighting this issue. And it's one that I think we can agree, like, no one sees a beach covered in plastic and goes, great. Like, we all see that and recognize that's a problem. And there's so much action being taken to prevent that it's a big challenge, but it's a really exciting time in coming up with these innovative solutions for reducing that and for companies starting to take really serious action. So I don't know. I'm eternally optimistic and hopeful when it comes to things like this, and I'm really glad we've gotten some great questions from students today. Maureen, I'm going to take a couple more from our YouTube friends, and then I'm going to go to Madam Lauren and Miss Evans' class after that. Miss Higgins' class, you guys have so many in the YouTube chat. I love it. Let's see. Okay. Wow. Oh, I love this. As future voters, what do you feel students should be thinking about if they begin to vote at 18 and are thinking about laws that impact the environment? The big question. I love this, grade 8s.
Yeah. Yep. So voting is pretty important, and I hope that all of you will vote when you're able to. And it's really easy to figure out which candidates are interested in topics you're interested in. It's easy to find that out. So basically, there are laws that are out there right now, and they're stuck because it means that the legislators won't vote on them, or they'll vote them down. And one huge one was created by the global organization Break Free from Plastic, and we're a core member of them. And huge legislation, very comprehensive for our whole nation. And it's what you call dead in the water, because it just will not be passed. So you guys can do that in a few years, help pass something like that.
Yep. I will note too, it's been quite exciting actually. The U.S. recently passed the largest bit of environmental legislation ever in its history in this administration. So there's some really great stuff happening around the country and beyond in terms of investment into environmentally friendly practices, fighting climate change, helping with plastics, helping save biodiversity. So there's some great stuff happening there. Canada has a really big government right now invested in public education, in conservation, and more. Globally, governments are starting to commit to 30 by 30, protecting 30% of their habitats, taking ocean plastics and ocean issues generally seriously. And so it's a really exciting time to see where voter activism and the work of people like Maureen has gone forward to really produce lasting, real change on a world scale. And so, yes, voting is probably the main way that you can make a positive difference. If you support candidates that have the best interests of the earth at heart. And again, as Maureen said, you can find out who those are very, very easily online. Most governments now have really accessible public databases on the sort of policy positions of various candidates in elections from local to provincial or state to federal. You can take those choices and make a really big difference in the world. It's my favorite question we ever get in environmental programs. So thank you.
And the other thing is EPR. So as I mentioned, in Colorado, we passed, our governor signed the bill, the EPR bill, extended producer responsibility. I don't know if that exists in Canada. Does anybody know if that's been passed in Canada?
Something specific like that? I don't know. I know it's one of those things that I know has been talked about for a very long time in a variety of ways. I don't know if we have anything in the books like that. Miss Evans, you answered earlier really fast, so maybe you know, or Fournier. So let me know, and I'll try and find it out for classes after as well.
Huge. And many European countries have already passed EPR and are well on their way. So
I always get to say in environmental programs, people are like,
"Who's doing Jesse?"
Yeah, like whenever we do a program and it's like, who's doing things well, you can pretty much guarantee that Norway, Sweden, Finland, or Denmark have done it before. They've done it really, really well. Like Scandinavia is like on the ball for everything good about the environment, justice, and beyond. So I really like when we get this question. I will finally bring up focotrashmob@gmail.com, which I will highlight at the end of the broadcast as well if you want to follow up with Maureen and her team. And they're also on Instagram at focotrashmob. So if you want to follow up with them there, see some of the things they've got on the go, there is lots to discover. Miss Evans, I'm going to come to you, and then we'll take one more YouTube question. We might have time for a couple more after that. We'll see how we go. Time flies and you're having fun. But Miss Evans, come on back in. Oh,
there's also one in the chat that I wouldn't mind.
Yes, I'm gonna get to everything, okay. Maureen. Don't worry, I'm on the ball. Miss Evans, come on in, guys. Hey.
All right. So you mentioned about the cell phone recycling and the gorillas, and one of my students asked, are there some other examples of plastics, hurting animals in the environment? Could you share some other examples of that?
Yeah, perfect.
The iconic video of pulling the straw out of the turtle is always coming to mind. But plastic hurts animals in just about every single way that you can imagine, from plastic that breaks down to microplastics where they're eating it. The marine life is eating those things. Plastic that gets caught around their necks and their bodies and kills them that way. Even PFAS, which is a kind of weird addition to some plastic that they were putting on people's tents who were trying to be out in nature, and then it would rain and the PFAS would kind of melt off the tent and it would get into animals. So all of this is very detrimental to animals, to us as well. But we can sort of, oh, here's some plastic, I'm going to throw it away. The animal can't do that. So that's a good question.
I'm so glad we got this one too. And again, we've done a bevy of programs featuring how plastics impact ocean animals on our YouTube channel. You can check all those out right here. One in particular that's really jarring, but also fascinating for students that are able to handle this. We've had Anna Roebuck on a couple times doing live dissection. So they find seabirds that have died, and they dissect them live in our broadcast, and every single one of them has plastics in them. Every single one. So
Right.
it's shocking, it's jarring to think that way, but it does drive the point home that what we do with our waste really has an impact, not just locally, but globally. Every beach on this planet, the most remote islands in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, have plastic littering their shores. The bottom of the deepest ocean on this planet has plastic in it, 30,000 plus feet down. And so it's something that really behooves us all to take action and help. And I'm really glad when we get to feature that question. So thank you, Ms. Evans. All right, I'm going to take a few quick more ones. Madam Lauren did have to go, but her class asked before they left, why aren't more companies using different materials instead of single-use plastics if they know that they're harmful?
Yeah. And we know why they're doing it. It's cheaper. Plastic
Yeah.
is cheaper than anything else that the manufacturers can use. And I just want to say that I think where we are currently is things that humans are doing that are detrimental to the environment are incentivized, and things that help the environment that humans could do are disincentivized, meaning they're more expensive or harder to do or harder to find. We need to reverse that. We need
Yep.
to think about ways to incentivize things that help our environment and to disincentivize and make the other things more expensive, like plastic.
I'm again, great question, guys. I want to follow up with this question from YouTube, and then I'm going to head to Miss Coddington's to wrap us up in a quick minute. I know we could take questions all day, and I will encourage you, if you want questions all day, bug Maureen when you're done. She will take all your questions all the live long day. I'm signing her up for that right now, live on the broadcast, so there's no pressure at all. This question comes from our group online, and I love this. I don't know if you know this, Maureen. In Canada, we have milk bags. So it's a big bag of milk with 3 little bags of milk. We're the only country in the world that has it. They are single-use plastics, Esther. And so for me personally, I used to get milk bag like that all the time. I drink a lot of milk. My bones are like iron. It's actually a little more expensive to get the box that's recyclable. And for me, I was economically able to do that. So I switched to the boxes because I could recycle them instead of the plastic bags. That's not accessible to everyone. I know groceries are very expensive right now in Canada, but that's something that you can do to help take action to prevent that, because they do produce a ton of waste. Literally millions and millions of milk bags just go straight to the trash, cannot be used again every single day in Canada. So strange part of our...
Can
No.
you reuse? No, because
No.
they're stinky. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're a weird plastic too. They're like a unique plastic. It's like our strange contribution to the world's plastic pollution problem is plastic milk bags. So way to go, Canada. Miss Coddington, I'm going to head to you guys for one final question. Thank you all so much for your enthusiasm in this, but take us away. Come on up close to the camera, girls. Hi. Oh, I'm really sorry. I didn't quite catch that. Miss Coddington, could you repeat that from the other side of the device? Oh, I'm really not catching it at all. Oh, there we go. How are you planning on celebrating Earth Month? What a great question, girls. Thank you.
Yeah, our group Foco Trash Mob is going to be at 4 different Earth Day events. Hopefully you have some near you. They're super fun. I highly recommend Earth Day events if you have one near you. If you don't, maybe you could do an Earth Day like celebration, have tables at your school, have information and stuff, like a fair, like an Earth Day fair. And we've got lots of ideas. We're happy to send you ideas for how to make a fun Earth Day. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, you'll have to email Maureen when you're done the broadcast. I know for us at Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants, we're hosting like a gazillion broadcasts with conservationists and explorers. So that's our Earth Month celebration, is showing these stories to get you guys excited. Maureen, thank you so much for joining us today for all our classes. Is there any final message you have on Trash Mob, on plastic pollution that we can leave our kids with before we wrap up today?
I just hope that all of you will do what you can. I mean, that's really all we can do. And so I appreciate you listening to me. And I highly encourage all of you to look at these different groups that we're affiliates of. And you'll see that map on that slide. You can start a youth group for Beyond Plastics. There's one in New Jersey, and they're doing a lot of good work. So best of luck to y'all.
Best of luck to y'all. Miss Conington, Fournier, Miss Evans, I'm going to bring you all in to say a big thank you and farewell with me. YouTubers, if you want to scream at home too, Miss Higgins class, you guys were great in the chat, but I'll bring in all our live classes. Thank you all so much, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye for now, guys.